Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. And it is the 4th season. Yes, the season premiere. This is my 61st episode of Direct Edition. And I could not be more proud of all of the things that I've been able to put down. And couldn't ask much more for this great audience. But we're not here to talk about me. We're not here to talk about you. We're here to talk about Alice Darrow. My guest this week, Alice's background is in animation and character design, but she is on the precipice of releasing her first ever comic book called Tramps of the Apocalypse, which you're going to hear us talk about a lot. I gush all over the comic because I really did enjoy reading it. It's hilarious, it's poignant, it's silly in some of its delivery and very serious in some of its other delivery. Alice and I have been speaking on and off for the last year on Instagram because I had purchased a collection of original art from an artist that passed away, Jason Poland. And in that collection was a whole bunch of her dad's art, Jeff, but there was I believe it was a Wonder Woman illustration that Jason had bought from Alice at, I think, New York Comic Con. If not, it was San Diego Comic Con. And I didn't at first know who the art was by. And then I forget how I figured it out. Maybe Jeff told me when I posted this stuff, or somebody, I figured it out. Anyway, I contacted Alice on Instagram. I said, hey, look, I bought this collection. This is something that you did when you were younger. Would you like it back? Because I felt like when you're young and you're selling your art or something like that, maybe you don't realize how you might miss it. So I just offered it back, not for any other reason than just to be kind. And I sent it back to her and she was very thankful. And then we just chatted a little bit. And I think she had mentioned that she had a comic book coming out this year that wasn't finished. And I said, oh, I'd love to have you on my program. And, here we are. Long story short. But she's an extremely talented young woman. And I'm really excited for people to see this comic. And this conversation is pretty wide ranging from influences, as I generally like to talk about. But when I recorded this was like day 2 of the United States government sending troops into LA, and she's in LA. So, we're both very liberal Jews, and we have things to say about the state of affairs in this country. And we talk a lot about that, but interweaving it in and out of empathetic talk and just wanting people to have the rights that they should have by birth. And so there's a lot of comic talk in here, movie talk and humor talk. But if you find mocking our current president and also Elon Musk offensive, then maybe this isn't for you. But I think my listeners get where I'm coming from. Anyway, here comes my interview with the talented Alice Darrow. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the season 4 premiere of Direct Edition. And my guest today has a comic coming out this week. Her first comic that she's writing, and she is the illustrator on. And let me tell you, it's hilarious and awesome. It's called Tramps of the Apocalypse. And I'm talking to Alice Darrow. Alice, how are you?
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm doing well considering I live in LA, so.
Yes, and for the listeners, this is being recorded in second week of June, and right now, we'll call him our de facto leader, even though there's no leading going on, has sent some pretty gnarly military stuff into LA, and they're messing with peaceful protesters. So yeah, a lot of friends that live in LA, and I'm glad to hear that things are doing okay despite. Yeah. But you have it's a time to rejoice. You have your first comic coming out this week.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Again, thank you so much for having me on to talk about it. I'm
Hmm.
obviously really nervous about like my first thing coming
Yeah.
out into the world. But hopefully everyone likes it or at least has like a good laugh reading it.
Well, and I've read it now 3 times, and it's rare for me, and I think it's just rare in general to find a comic that will do the job of being a good comic, but also making you laugh. And comics are rooted in humor. They always have been, going back to the Carl Barks and what he was doing with Scrooge. So I do like to take it back. And growing up, were there any comics that you can specifically point to that you read that you're like, oh, I love this medium?
Well, I think one of the first like comic book, and this is more manga, but the
Mm-hmm.
first piece of comic book art that I picked up, my dad had gotten me, and it was Akira Toriyama's Dr. Slump.
Mm-hmm.
And I laughed so hard reading it. And I had always been drawing up to that point. I just didn't really know like what I was going to do with it. And as soon as I picked it up, I was like, I want to do this. I want to
Yeah.
make someone laugh like this. It was really important for me. And then I discovered like Daniel Klaus, who I loved, and Jaime Hernandez. And it just from there, I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, you were drawn to the underground. Although, Toriyama obviously is not underground, but in the US, you've got, like you said, Los Bros and Clouds and, the indie underground. But it's funny because I've never read Dr. Slump, but I've read just Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. I mean, it's completely like one of the horniest things I've ever read in my life, but it's aimed towards kids. And it's like, you can do all of these things. It's kind of like the movies of the 80s. You can aim them for adults and kids at the same time. Everybody's going to take whatever they want out of it and enjoy it. But his style of cartooning is hilarious too.
So fun. And he could really draw. I
Yeah.
mean, gosh, the machines he would design, like he could really, really draw, and it was really stylized. And I do recommend reading Dr. Slump. I think that was, I don't want to speak on his behalf, of course, but he did love that comic book very much. And I think
Hmm.
apologies if it upsets people that I use comic book and manga interchangeably, but it was kind of his baby. I think he really
Yeah.
liked that one a lot, and it really shows. So I do encourage. It's 18 volumes of
Yeah.
like thick volumes, so it's a little less daunting than like the whole Dragon
I
Ball
know.
the
I mean,
saga. And you're right, like you read it and when you're a kid, you don't understand certain things, and then you read it as an adult, and you're like, oh, that's so so clever.
I also think, for most people that are into reading comics, everybody knows, like, manga is their comics and we just call our comics comics,
Yeah,
but they do something special over there with, like you said, these long, stories, and they're great to read, and you can pick one up and you don't really need to know sometimes what's going on. I mean, can't really pick up Akira book 3 and understand what's going on. But, I feel like Toriyama is like Carl Barks, and, you can just read the stories as they are.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so with Tramps, it's like I said, it's a hilarious book, but it's also very much aimed at taking kind of like a look at the patriarch and the matriarch, and and kind of shining a light on everybody's, I don't know, shortcomings. One of the things, as soon as I started reading it, and then the second time I started reading it, kind of like reminded me of the joke that Uma Thurman tells in Pulp Fiction about the Fox Force 5, which ends up kind of becoming the genesis for Kill Bill. Like, I got that feeling the when I was reading the book. But what are your major inspirations for this story?
Well, I am a huge, huge fan of Russ Meyer. I love Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, and that was kind of my main influence. I mean, the baby is supposed to be 100% Teresa Tana. Like, I love her in that movie, but I also just love her as a person.
Yeah.
Um, and I do love that Russ Meyer was just kind of like, do whatever you want, girlfriend. Like, go for it. And she kind of terrorized everyone on set.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to throw like a kind of a curveball in there, which is that the WAP music video by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion was also like a huge inspiration because I'm going to tell you why. Um, I always try to kind of draw from not just comics, but a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember when that video came out, the reaction from the right was so violent. And it
Yeah.
really led me to kind of question like, obviously, like men love sexualizing women all the time. So, what made this different? And what made it different was that it was a woman's point of view. It was women
Exactly.
sexualizing themselves in a way that didn't really, that was scary to men. And I was like, they're onto something here. And like I said, I've always questioned like, how do we exist in this world, right? Because it's like
Mm-hmm.
too much clothing, oh, you're prude. Not enough clothing, oh, you're slut.
Yeah,
How do
yeah.
we, you know? So
And I can't ever put myself in the shoes of a woman. Period. End of story. Like it's not an experience I'll ever have. And I think listening, I mean, I like to listen to people. That's why I have a podcast. I want to hear people tell their story. And I'm all for like women taking their own sexuality, their own power, their own voice into their own hands and giving it to us, whether it's in a song, in a movie, in a book, in a comic, whatever it is. Art is the voice of the people.
yeah,
And it's just great that you're doing it in this way. Like you've got a character in there. And I'm not gonna go into spoilers. This is a 3-issue miniseries. It comes out June 25th is the first issue, but you got one of these men characters that they encounter in the first issue that is a Proud Boy Nazi looking guy, but he's wearing like short shorts and he's got a gun called Little Cutie.
it's so funny because I think people are gonna assume like that, and it works that way that like that's in reference to his penis. But actually, when I was writing it, my thought was how funny would like in an apocalyptic world where like maybe there aren't many resources left, like there aren't any more factories, like things are hard to find, like a guy would find that little gun and be like, "That's so cool!" Like I got my little but then it ended up working in the other way too. I mean, it's kind of I like to joke around how like homoerotic these like and even like Trump supporters. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of a big inspiration for it too. It's like hey, you really love Donald Trump there, like
A little too much.
a little like I've seen people driving around with like Trump license plates and
Mm-hmm.
with like Trump, and it's like, hey,
Well,
we get it.
yeah. I mean, it's what a cult looks like. It really is. Like when you iconicize somebody and you drive around with all of their stuff. Like it's not like this is like you're driving around with Darth Vader, something like, a character, fictional, or Kermit the Frog or whatever. This is a real person that ruins everything in real time. And you're putting him up as an icon. Like I am proud to support this person that is literally ruining people's lives one day at a time.
Yeah,
I mean, we can make the clear association with idolizing a guy like Hitler or something, but luckily right now, and I think this is a real feeling, is like luckily right now he hasn't gone that step, and we want to prevent that, but there is a clear distinction of what we grew up learning about him versus what's going on right now.
yeah, it's I'm hoping I mean, in many ways there and we're on our way, like in some states like we are, and I mean what I'm really concerned about is the deportation. I mean,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
images are really shocking, and unfortunately, like as a Jew,
You
horrible
can't
failure. Um,
right.
and I always kind of felt like I don't know. I'd like to make something funny, but I would also like to make something that is um, political and that has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also part of why wrote this comic book. And again, I think humor is a really good way to talk about
Attack.
politics.
Yes. Well, I mean, look, I mean, it's something that I talk about often. We talked about it beforehand, but like from the Jewish culture, there has been so many amazing people that have used humor to attack the real subjects. I mean, Mel Brooks is one of the greatest examples of that. I mean, any comedian, whether it's a Larry David doing his shtick, but he
Yeah.
still represents it. And um, Joan Rivers was Jewish, right? Or is she still alive?
Joan Rivers, no, she
Yeah.
passed away, unfortunately, but
Okay.
she
She
was very funny.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like she'd been alive my whole life. Like I figured she's just always alive.
Yeah, I mean, she's such an iconic part of pop culture and so funny and savage.
Mm-hmm. But
But Mel Brooks, I'm a huge fan of Mel Brooks, and actually, Blazing Saddles was also like a huge inspiration for. I was like, I want it to be like a kind of cowboy.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I You come from an animation background. We work in animation. What also the vibes I got was very much like the storytelling you would kind of the narration you would see in maybe like Adventure Brothers or something similar to that, where the narration of this book is adds to the humor. It's like the icing on top of the cake. I mean, there's a line about it's like a wasteland of I forget what it's, but it's like ED medication is part of this wasteland, and it's part of the plot of this first issue.
well, if they let me continue, there's a whole. There was a war, and the whole context is that there was a war over ED medication. Buy lots of copies so I can continue the story. But I completely forgot where I was going with that thought.
Maybe with the narration and the ED medication.
Oh,
I
we
don't
were
know.
talking about animation.
Yes.
I went to school for illustration,
Hmm.
and they kept trying to get me not to draw comic books, but I did it anyways. And then I had to take an internship, and my awesome boss and producer during that internship calls me like at the end. I'm about to graduate college, and she goes, "Well, do you want to become a character? Like, do you want to come be a character designer full time?" And
Hmm.
that's kind of how I ended up um, in animation. I think comics also makes you draw really fast, so I was
Oh yeah.
really apt at like kind of doing a lot of characters in the day.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where I mean, I actually can't, I don't know how to animate, but I know how to design. And so I've worked on those Futurama season, like the Futurama reboot and Disenchantment.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
it has added a lot to like my comic book practice. Um, in terms of like discipline and also simplifying things with shape instead of
Yeah.
line.
There's several comic creators, and one that comes to mind is Derek Kirk Kim, who was a comic guy and then went into animation and came back to comics. And it feels like people that are working in animation can seamlessly, and it's obviously on the outside it seems seamless, but seamlessly kind of go into comics and work in that medium and get better at both things at the same time. Did you find that, like you were just saying, it feel like your skills upgraded the more you're doing some of each?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like there's no better drawing school than like working in animation. I mean, you have to draw fast. You also get like you work with these directors that have been in the business for a really long time. Like one of
Hmm.
the supervising directors on Futurama, Dwayne Carey Hill and Peter Avenzino, like they give incredible notes. And it's incredible to work a job where you have people who are telling you what's wrong with your drawing and how you can fix it. Uh,
Hmm.
and that really informs then when you go to comics and you start working on your own stuff, like you just get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Um, and
Repetition.
I beat myself up a lot about like, oh, the drawing is not good enough. Oh, I hate it. And I just kind of try to remind myself, like, you draw every day, like you're gonna get better eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do something like you said, and if it's a repetition, especially if you care about it, that's the real thing. I mean, you can tell when you pick up a comic or you watch a movie, or you whatever it is, the art, you can tell if the artist is into what they're doing or not, and I can tell by reading this book, not only is, you're into drawing it, but even just the dialogue is, I mean, like the opening scene where the three of them, which are it's Princess, Baby, and Belladonna, right? Those are their three names.
It's Belladonna, Baby, and Babette.
Oh, okay. Because one of them calls the other one Princess, and I wasn't sure if that was the name or
A
a
little
term.
nickname. Maybe
Yeah.
Princess Babette is her full name.
Oh. And in that first scene, like they are, I mean, I kind of feel like anybody can relate to that. It's like three people who are forced in a car together, and they're not all going to get along. I mean, I've been on enough road trips in my life to know that after a while, you're just like, shut the fuck up already.
Three is not a good. Three is
No,
not a good number.
it's 2 verse 1 always, or it's one,
It's true.
Going into the creation of these characters, any, I know you said Faster Pussycat. Are there pieces of you or any of your friends in these three women, like characteristics that you're like, oh, I really like it when so and so is like this, I'm going to make that a characteristic?
That's a good question. I think like she's gonna laugh when I say this, but like my mom has like a really authoritative. When she walks into a room, like she's got it under control. Like she's really got a vibe of like I'm handling the situation. And so I think I definitely kind of infused her in like Baby's character. I mean, my mom's like a lot sweeter and gentler than Baby, but I do think she was kind of an inspiration. I think visually and also like in terms of personality, like I really, really love and respect Megan Thee Stallion. And she was kind of a bit, I mean, she's obviously not a friend of mine, but on the topic of who inspired the characters. And then I think like, because I mean, like I said, other than my mom, who I can kind of think of off the top of my head, like I don't know that
Yeah.
there were people in my direct environment that necessarily influenced the characters. Um, I think Belladonna is a really important character because I was working on this like during the election cycle,
Mm-hmm.
um, and she kind of represents kind of like white female apathy. And she does learn throughout the comic book, but she was a really important, like, I really drew from like the way that white feminists behave sometimes, like trans exclusionary feminists. And, the kind of like, well, it doesn't concern me, so why do I care? It should it should concern you. It should concern us all. And so she was a really kind of important balance to these other two characters who are, one of them is obviously supposed to be Trisitana, so she's Japanese, and Babette is Black. So that was also a really important dynamic where you have these two characters who, like, this is their life. They're stranded, they're being chased down by this authoritarian regime. And then you have this third character that's kind of like a third wheel and it doesn't really think. He's like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. Well, we all know people like that, like you said. I mean, it's one thing, to be like, I can't directly do anything, but you should actually try and, right, like, be aware, like, understand what's going on, understand what it's like to be somebody that's being persecuted for some reason or another, because the more you understand that, the better you are equipped to work against that.
Yeah, and just having some empathy, like, I do think, I go back to always, like, Elon Musk saying empathy was a bad thing. Like, of course, unless someone says something a little bit mean to him, then everyone should have empathy.
What a fragile little man.
Fragile little man. I think, empathy is a really, really important thing. And I do think we're losing it as time goes on. Something that doesn't affect you now might affect you later. My husband came here on a green card where, we're married, and I've like not, I worry because, it's not us yet, but I know how these things work. And so it's important to put yourself in other people's shoes. And sometimes, like, I hate to say it, this is the Jew in me. You always imagine the worst case scenario.
Oh, of course, but that's caked
And then, of
into
course,
us. Yeah,
so,
that's baked into us. I talked a lot in recent, even with my therapist, I talk about like how anxiety and what comes from anxiety really is part of DNA. I mean, it's if we as people didn't go through what we've been through, I can't even imagine what it's like to think about like slavery as a black person, like have that be in your DNA, even though it's in ours from Egypt. But that's what I'm saying. Like these things are in our DNA to be anxious about, and I think the anxiety also creates a lot of empathy. I'd like to think that's kind of a, ballpark thing. Like everybody who deals with anxiety has a lot of empathy.
it's true. It is true. And it kind of brings up for me like the whole thing of like the generational scars of
Hmm.
people who have been like, I think of all like those kids in Gaza and all of their like the generational, like the impact that this genocide will have on
Yeah.
just all of these generations of people is just, horrific. And I do think, we should just all have like just at least 10% more like empathy and concern for our neighbor. I mean, like sometimes I'm just shocked by the lack of like seeing January 6 rioters be like, I
Yeah.
hope the police kill those protesters.
Uh,
What's wrong
it,
with you?
yeah.
Like, you know, and those are the kind of people I make fun of in my comic book. These like horrible, like bros.
It's bros. No, it is. I mean, I've been allergic to that word for so long too. Like somebody calls me bro and I'm like, oh God, this person's doesn't actually know me. I'm like, I'm not your bro. I have one brother
Don't call me bro.
and yeah, don't call me bro. Like I would love to just wear a black t-shirt, big white letters. Don't call me bro. But then
Don't
people
call
will be
me
calling me bro.
I also want that. I also want that shirt.
Like you can call me dude. You can call me man. You could also just say my name.
Yeah.
Dave works real well, real well. But yeah, talking about the people that you kind of bring to light in this comic. I mean, the dialogue is snappy and like I love both sides of it. Like there's the little cutie thing, but then like one of the characters calls her tits for brains or yeah, and I'm just like I never heard that before and I snort laughed. Like I snort laughed at that. But yeah, you take the shots at both sides, but obviously the guys in this, the men feel like they're characters out of Idiocracy.
It's funny because I wrote this thing and then I found out my husband had never watched Idiocracy and we watched it and I was like, oh, yeah, I think the movie was so etched in my brain. Like that's a huge, obviously was a huge influence and I didn't even think about it until I watched it. I was like, oh, for sure. Um, I mean, yeah, the levels of stupidity. I mean, it was pretty fun. I mean, writing dialogue is obviously really fun. Sometimes I had to scale it back because when you're writing, you tend to like write a ton of dialogue, and
Sure.
sometimes it's funny, but it's too much. It's too much. But yeah, I wonder where I got tits for brains from. I kind of assumed that was like a typical expression, but your reaction is telling me that that's actually people don't say that.
No, I mean, if they do, it's not obviously something I'm exposed to. I don't really hang around with, too many people that would say that. But I mean, obviously the phrase is shit for brains, but like, yeah, it's just so witty and snappy. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons this comic spoke to me. Like we've been talking for a year now, and you told me about the comic, and you know, when the title came out, I'm like, I don't know what to expect. And then reading it, I'm like, yeah, this is. I mean, I think it was either in the synopsis or somebody put it like Idiocracy mixed with Mad Max. I'm like, that's a pretty apt description.
That is, I mean, I love Mad Max, and I watched it while I was working on this thing. Obviously, I want them to make another
Yes.
Furiosa movie, obviously. And then Idiocracy, like I said, some things just are, I think, etched,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's such like a smart movie, and it's really hard to watch now because you're like, this is real close to reality.
Way too on the nose. Way too on the nose. But he was always that was Mike Judge movie, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's been ahead of the curve since he came into the spotlight with Beavis and Butthead. Like
he's awesome.
yeah, I mean, look at I mean, anybody that's ever worked in an office and you've seen Office Space, you're like, yep, that's
Yep.
on the nose. There are some people out there that the pulse is something that they're on top of before anybody else is, and he's one of them.
Yes, 100%. Huge inspiration and animation too. I mean, really.
Yeah, him. Like Matt Groening's another one, just ahead of the curve by a mile and a half, and we're all better for it because the Simpsons have been here forever.
Exactly. And that's the magic of comedy too. Like sometimes you imagine like the craziest thing that could happen that would be the funniest, and it transpires in real time. So
Yep. Sometimes for the better, but most times for the worse. So I wanted to ask you, because I mean, for anybody that hasn't put the two and two together, your dad is comic book royalty. I mean, your dad, Jeff, anybody that's been reading comics for more than like 10 or so years understands there is a Mount Rushmore and he's on it. Growing up, I know you went to Comic-Con with him a lot, and that's kind of like, from what I understand, like you were drawing at the table. Obviously, I gave you back one of your old drawings, but can you like take us back to the experience of being at Comic-Con and just kind of drawing at the table, because people were buying your art when you were young.
I look back at that and it was kind of crazy. I think I must have been in 6th grade, and my dad was going to Comic Con, and I was like, I kind of want to go with you, and he was like, why not? And he took me with him, and I was like, you know what? And I think I started out with these. I used to draw people's zodiac signs, like as a sketch. Like that was and people bought them. And I think being a little girl was cute and kind of a,
sure.
But for me, it was like a really serious thing. And it was also like a really lovely thing to be able to sit with my dad and draw with him and spend time with him and also experience Comic-Con. Because we would be I was always so excited because when they open the doors to Comic-Con, people are just like running, sprinting, like their life depends on it. Like, a zombie apocalypse. I always thought like if a fire ever breaks out, like we're screwed. Like, but it was like an incredible experience. And I think it really helped me, also accept criticism, and kind of that was my first step of putting myself out there, where like I was kind of exposing myself to being like, oh, you can't draw, or like you suck. Which, by the way, like I couldn't draw very well as a little girl. But people came over and bought my drawings, and I don't know if they saw potential in me, or but it meant a lot. It gave me a lot of confidence, and I kept my current boss, the incredible Claudia Katz, she discovered me. We met at San Diego Comic-Con, and she tried my artwork. And so then she hired me for an internship, and then hired me to work full time. So in a lot of ways, like I owe my entire career to those times with my dad at Comic-Con. It was really like a huge leg up that I had in the world. And I do think that's important to mention because it's such a hard business, an artist. And I can't really stand it when people are like, I made it here all on my own.
Well, I mean, nobody, you can't really make it like at some point, right? You need somebody to see your work, to make it. I mean, I can think of a lot of creators out there that have, made it on their own, but they talk about how much work and somebody had to see it, famously, I mean, somebody I talk about a lot, Todd McFarlane, talks about the hundreds of rejection letters he got until he got the one letter that wasn't a rejection. And it's like, you got to do, and you drawing at a young age is your pathway to eventually getting in there. And what you know about your boss and getting found there, it's pretty much like this story that keeps coming back over and over. More people I talk to is, yeah, I went to a Comic-Con and I showed people my samples and one person said yes. And that's where my career started. But it doesn't happen by, you know, it doesn't happen without the work,
Yeah.
you know?
I do. That has always kind of been my you know I was very lucky, and I try my best to earn it by, you know, my dad was very much like, this is a really hard job, and you need
Hmm.
to work super hard. And sometimes in high school we would butt heads because I was a slacker at school, as I've said at school, as I've said in previous interviews. I was not very good. I hated math, and so my dad was like very like, you need to have work ethic. And I do my best, even though, like, you know, I have a lot of imposter syndrome. Obviously, like it's hard when I'm drawing, and I just tell myself like I'm gonna keep working. You know, as I said previously, like I'm just gonna work as hard as I can to earn my place here. That's kind of how I see it.
I mean, imposter syndrome, I deal with it a lot. You know, I'm like, nobody wants to hear me interview anybody. Nobody wants to talk to me. But clearly people do. So I'm wrong in that. But I just keep, you know, I keep my head down and I work. And I was like you. I mean, damn, I was a slacker until I was like 30. But hey, I did a lot of things I wanted. So I don't consider that to be a slacker. I just didn't apply the work that I should have been working and doing. But whatever. Can't change the past.
Yeah, we ended up in a good place.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, I owe a lot to my dad. Was a really big influence for me in obviously drawing, like I learned from him. And then someone I don't often talk about is my mom. She's a
Hmm.
writer, and she is super talented, and she has read everything I've ever done, and she will note me to death, and I am really happy about it. She always gives the best constructive criticism, and she read all of my Tramps scripts and made sure they weren't total garbage. So thank you, Mom. Um, so I was really lucky in that sense to also have them to guide me. And, you know, having artist parents are also like very blunt,
Oh, I
which is
bet.
useful, hurtful sometimes, but useful.
um, I recently had on the podcast Liam Finn, who's a musician, and his dad is the founder and singer of Crowded House, and like his whole family's musical. And you know, he talked about like not being pushed, but being encouraged to pick an instrument and try it. And then, you know, he's got his own musical career now, and it's something that I love hearing as artists, whether whatever medium you're in, being encouraged and being supported by their parents or even just one parent, whatever it is. And I think it's just something that really needs to be for, I mean, if everybody can be supportive of their children, I think the world just gets a little bit better, you know?
1,000,000%. In more topics than one, parents should be supportive of their children.
Hmm.
Um, I also like I ran into a lot of kids in art school that like their parents did not want them to be there, and I think it is the bravest thing to go against your parents to do what you love, and
Hmm.
to do what makes you happy. And I always thought that was so impressive. Um, in general, parents should be supportive of their kids. Like my husband
Yeah.
was lucky enough; his he draws too. He's in animation. He's a revisionist and board artist. Like his parents pushed him to, you know, that is also like a huge leg up.
Hmm.
Money, sport, like those are all things that allow kids to, you know, kind of pursue their dreams. And they don't always realize that these things are like not a given.
No, no. Um, and your husband, speaking of your husband, he's your colorist on the book, right?
He is Hugo
Yeah.
Blanc.
I thought that was really interesting, and then it kind of gets to my next question. I can't assume it, but are you doing traditional, or are you doing digital, or are you doing a mix of both?
So I draw the pencils in digital, and then I print
Mhm.
them out and I ink them by hand. And then my husband colors them digitally. The reason I do this, because you'll probably be like, why? What a waste of time! Just ink on tablet. No, and I'm going to tell you why. First, I like inking, and I don't want it to be a lost art.
Right.
Second of all, like I know well and good that you got to have art to sell. We need to have some piece of art to, end the month, as they say in French. It just kind of translated that weirdly, but yeah, it's just nice. Like I want to have a physical copy of what I did. It's really important to me. So there, but it is faster to draw on tablet. It is true.
Is there anything you specifically do while you're inking? Do you ink in silence? Do you ink with music on, TV, anything like that?
I'm going to expose myself as a trash TV viewer. I do have a playlist, which I'm actually going to release I do have like a playlist of music that I listen to, but I watch a lot of television. I listen to a lot of television.
Sure.
That's what I listen to, and I've been doing this with my dad pretty much since I was of age, watching Law and Order Special Victims Unit. Now, I know that is like, it's a rough show, but
sure.
I love Marissa Haggerty so much. And it's been kind of like a lifelong tradition of we've listened to Law and Order. We did it with the X-Files too. I'm a big fan of the X-Files, so we'd have to like stop and watch that. But Law and Order SVU. And the thing is, you can also leave that show and you come back to it, and there's 500 more episodes.
I think they're in like season 32 right now.
I'll have content forever. Unfortunately, when I say trash, because that's not. Listen,
it's not Breaking Bad, but it's not reality TV.
I also watch The Real Housewives quite religiously, and that is trash TV. I do. I will listen to them while I'm working. I've outed myself as a Real Housewives enjoyer. And one of my coworkers too, the lovely Pam, if she sees this, she also watches Real Housewives, and so we have like it's also our little social thing where we talk about what's going on. So yeah, inking. It's funny because inking looks relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. It is very. I think it's a very stressful thing to do because you mess up inking traditionally. Like there's only so much you can fix, and then I'm bothered if I have to then fix it digitally. I want the original to look good.
Right. But beauty of art is also in the imperfections.
It's true.
So the the French part of you, because you're French American, right? The French part of you likes, Daniel Clowes. It likes the good stuff. The American part of you likes the Real Housewives. It makes sense.
Everything, we've got to have a balance.
Yeah.
We gotta have a balance.
I mean, my balance is I read all that stuff and I listen to stuff, I listen to music that is great and these storied bands, but I also love Limp Bizkit. So, it is what it is.
You gotta have a balance.
Yeah. Otherwise you go crazy.
Works.
Speaking on your mom a little bit, she's a filmmaker, right? Also?
She is, yes.
Yeah. Any of that background of hers ever influence you in certain ways? I mean, working in animation, I don't know if that kind of crossover, but artistic parents, I don't have two artistic parents, and you very much do. So I was just wondering the influences from her film career.
She has influenced me a lot also because she really quickly was taking me to see movies really early. And in my comic book, and I hope this is visible, movies are a really big influence on me. And especially this is where my dad and I differ artistically. He loves to have fun with different perspectives and different he'll just never wants the same shot once. I, on the other hand, kind of like to have fun with like, oh, we're staying in one place for a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of try to draw the comic book like a movie, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, you do. I totally see
Um,
that.
and so she really, I mean, she's the one who showed me like Russ Meyer. She would take me when we lived in Chicago. Like she would take me to the Music Box Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Go see. I have like we go see Hitchcock movies. A lot of Audrey Hepburn movies. If any of you have not seen Wait Until Dark, the great Audrey Hepburn movie, it's really scary. Um, I became like a huge Fellini fan. I have my little Roma.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I'm really grateful to her for that. She really exposed me to so much different culture, novels as well. So she's fun. But then she'd also take me, like I remember when I was like a really little girl. She'd be like, "Come on, we're going to see a film by this like niche Armenian director," and it was like 4 hours, black and white, and it was like these sheep herders herding sheep. And like
Very
I know
probably
you think I'm
quiet.
exaggerating. I am not. And I think I was maybe 8 years old, and so I don't know. I think that is so fun because I was sitting in the theater like, "Get me out!"
Yeah, there's certain films that like as a young person you shouldn't be forced to watch because then you're right, it's art. I mean, I saw Metropolis when I was young and I didn't get it. And then I saw it later on and I was like, okay, that it makes sense. Same with Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now ruined Brando for me. I didn't want to watch any more Brando movies after that because I hated him in Apocalypse Now. And I was like, why can't the second half of this movie be more like the first half?
Funny, and I can't watch war movies. I know this is like a really. I've never seen Apocalypse Now. I think my Hugo really really loves that movie, but I've actually never seen it. I have, however, seen Brando in the Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh my God. And yes, that is referenced in this first issue.
Life changing.
Holy shit. The stories about that movie are like eons better than the actual movie.
I the costuming I mean, I have a lot of questions because the one I don't know, like the face paint, the tunics, like there's just so. And funny enough, I think a while ago I was watching, it was like an episode of Modern Family, and they
Mhm.
had one of the characters like on a boat. They're like on vacation, and he was wearing like the Marlon Brando island, and I was like, that's such a niche ref. I was like, wow.
I mean, it's one of the biggest inside jokes, that movie, that like is a public thing, you know. And I mean, I feel like Kilmer talked about it in that documentary that he did a couple years back. But yeah, you hear the stories and you watch that movie and you're like, what the actual fuck?
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
It's
Well, maybe one day you'll do a comic exploring the stories behind the Island of Dr. Moreau
my
remake.
next project.
uh,
But I didn't mean to, like, I went off on a tangent.
no, that's fine.
There are some things like you watch as a kid and you're like, that was
Hmm.
one of them. Like that was an art movie that like, as an adult I may have been able to watch, but as a kid you're like, what is this? I don't care.
It's I try to. I mean, that's also the beautiful thing about movies, and even bad movies or bad art is just like it sometimes sticks with you, and I'll use that in quotes, but it sometimes sticks with you a little bit more than the good stuff, you know. So Jar Jar
I'm
Binks has stuck with me my whole life.
Same here. The one thing I remember about those prequels is Jar Jar Binks, unfortunately. But I also I do believe in watching bad stuff. I
Yeah,
do believe and I think John Waters said this too. So you gotta listen, you gotta watch the bad to appreciate the good. And you can
exactly.
also get a lot of inspiration from watching stuff that's poorly made.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and it can give you ideas on to do something that's the opposite or better or an improvement on that, like in your own voice, your own way, you know?
Exactly. Like,
Um, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, when you watch a Neil Breen movie, you know not to do what Neil Breen does. I don't know if you've ever seen. I'll have to send you some titles. That is
Okay.
an experience. It makes like The Room, if you've ever seen that,
Mhm.
makes The Room look good. It's really, I think his most famous one is called Fateful Findings,
Okay.
and it's indescribable. It was so life changing for me that I actually bought it on Apple TV.
I'm gonna have to check this movie out.
Yes, you absolutely do. It's however bad you're imagining it to be at this moment, it's worse.
Um, I do appreciate bad things a lot, and I think there's a lot of things that have come out in the last 10 years, and I'll say one title that everybody can, be like, "Oh, yeah, it's terrible." I think in 10 years, we're gonna be talking about Madam Web in a way that nobody understands now, like, how bad that movie is and how so much of it makes no sense, and it's amazing.
I Listen, I knew as soon as that trailer dropped. First of all, I'm a supporter of Dakota Johnson.
Sure, sure.
Um, as soon as that trailer dropped, I was like, "I'm gonna go see that." I went to see Craven too.
Oh god. Oh god. It's so
I went
bad.
to see Craven as well, which was pretty bad. But Madam Web, that shot of her at the end with the glasses in the wheelchair,
Yeah, Professor X looking Madam Web.
that was I mean, what a movie-going experience for sure. I
Yeah.
think we were 2 in the theater, worth every penny.
There's so much about that movie. Oh my god. Like the fact that they dubbed over the main villain's voice and it made no fucking sense.
I don't know why. I don't know because, like, I know that, like, he speaks English. I actually really like that actor quite a lot, and I was like, "This poor man, like, how what did he." I mean, I think it was another case of, like, studios will overtake these projects and then
Yeah.
conveniently blame it on, like, the director when they.
Oh, of course. Or they'll blame it on the star and then the star's like, "All right, I'm going to do all these talk shows and basically just say how much this wasn't a good experience." She had the
It
last she gets the last laugh on it. Her and Sydney Sweeney do not have to worry about that movie hankering down their career. So,
no, they do not.
no.
I'm glad to see she's gonna be in Dakota Johnson's gonna be in a Celine Song movie. I'm excited about that.
Mhm. Yeah, that comes out soon. I think maybe this week.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, is that's the Materialist, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's something in that cast for everybody.
It's true.
Like,
It's
that
true.
hits all of the bullet points.
All over it. But I'm also excited because like her if you've seen Past Lives, like it's so
Was that the Amazon, the woman that works in who was in that movie, Past Lives? I
it
don't
was
think I saw
Greta
Past.
Lee.
I didn't see
Um,
that.
it's really good. It's a very heartbreak. It's really original. It's beautifully filmed. The music is stunning, and it's a really original kind of concept because there's a story, but also not really.
Mhm.
It's really fantastic, and so I am excited about the Materialist because I don't think it's going to be what we are told it's going to be because she's quite the filmmaker.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. Hopefully, I don't eat my words. Hopefully, I don't go see it and be like, "What was this?"
You're at Dark Horse, and Dark Horse is one of those publishers where they are not, Marvel DC, they do their thing and that's what they do. Dark Horse and Fantagraphics and some of the other ones that are, like that will publish stories that are, I don't even know what to like classify them at. They're just indie stories, creator, stuff. And I think for my listeners, I think most people are into good stories and a good laugh. And because I don't consider myself to be one of those type of men that sit here and be like, bros for life or anything like that. I think at least the comic reading audience will be into it.
I'm glad to hear it. I also think, like, it's funny, the other day I came across, it was like a meme about leftist men. And it was just like a little meme poking, and it's funny how upset men got in the comments. And all I could think of was like, I see jokes about white women all the time, and I don't feel like personally. I usually just laugh and move on. So I think maybe a little introspection would do
Definitely.
you. I'm always like appreciative of men who can read this kind of thing and laugh and not feel personally attacked, unless of course they are those kinds of bros, in which case you should feel personally attacked.
Yeah, if Elon's your daddy and you drive a Cybertruck, this comic clearly isn't for you
It's
because
not for you.
you have no sense of humor. That's why you own a Cybertruck. Unless you own a Cybertruck that's maybe pink or something, like then you painted it pink and you have a sense of humor about yourself. I think that would be the only Cybertruck I'd be like not giving the finger to. Um, but I mean, I don't know. I want to read things that provoke me thoughtfully, provoke what I think about myself or my species. Um, if you want to call it that. I want to read something that's different, and this hits that bullet point. Also, the coloring like is such an interesting thing. Like it is what, three colors pretty much? White, black, pink, or I don't know what. I'm not a color aficionado. Um, but what color would that be considered?
It's white. It's just white, black and white with pink,
It
and
is.
it turns into, I think, purple. Yeah, purple is the
Mhm.
comic book goes on. And then you'll see in the second and third volume, the color also slowly transitions. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like bisexual lighting by accident, but it works. It's like
It's
between trans flag and bisexual flag, and that's wasn't intentional, but I'm glad to represent and support. And yeah, I'm also thankful. I was like a little bit worried because I don't know what you can. I mean, Dark Horse was so great because they just kind of let me do whatever I want. They had really good feedback, and they were just a really good publishing company to work with, super professional, and again, really respectful of my vision and what I wanted to do. So,
um going forward, I know this is a 3 issue a mini, but I've heard you talk about how you would like to keep going. Do you have the next story written out? Do you have a bunch of stuff already ready to go? Like you're like, I just need the yes, and I'm gonna start on the next volume.
um, I mean, I have like a huge, I know where I want it to go. I know, I'd like to get into more backstory of how the world ended up this way. And obviously, like, it does end on a cliffhanger. Like, I do not end it. Not to give you spoilers. And don't let that dissuade you from buying it. Buy it
That's right.
anyway so
That's
you
right.
can get more. Um, but yeah, I am hoping to be, to make more to be able to continue the story. I also have some other ideas I'd like to do. So the ball's in your court, Dark Horse, and also people, my customers.
Yeah, yeah. The comic readers. I mean, I had my LCS order 2 copies. Obviously one for myself, and then I'll probably just give one away on the channel because I believe in one of the best ways to spread the words of comics is to put them in people's hands, and if they get it for free, they'll buy the next two.
Yay! Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. And I would like to plug, if that is possible,
Yes.
June 28th at Golden Apple Comics. I did say June 28th and not January 28th,
I
which I
saw
wrote
that
on Instagram
yesterday.
stories like an imbecile. From 1 to 3 p.m., I will be signing at Golden Apple Comics with Hugo Blanc, my husband, who's also the colorist. And I will be selling a print, and 100% of the proceeds will go to the ACLU to keep fascists out of America. And I'll also have a donation box. So if you are in the LA County area, do not hesitate to stop by.
Yes, in Golden Apple, famous comic store. It's still on Melrose, right?
Let me look up the address if that's okay.
Yeah. Of course. I've been
Um,
there. I haven't been there in years, but I've been there a bunch of times.
It is on Melrose. It is on 7018 Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles, California.
That's right.
And it's a great comic shop. And I
It,
will be there on that day.
one could even say it's the comic book shop to the stars.
It's true.
Yeah, especially now that what Meltdown's been gone for 4 or 5 years now. That place was amazing.
I've been to that place actually. I was surprised. I was really sad to hear that it closed down.
Yeah, it was a staple.
We need more comic book stores.
That is very true. And if we can, wish a bunch more into existence, let's do that right now.
Yes. Manifest many more, the success of comic books.
Yes, and the fall of fascism.
Yes.
That is the overarching theme to this interview, this book, and our times right now is more comics, less fascism.
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm okay to smash the patriarchy too.
Nice. Good.
Well, I used to say this. This is not a new topic that, especially, you've talked about with my female friends, and just in general. Like, go through the history books and you look at all the wars and you look at all the, just nasty genocides and all this stuff. None of it was started by a woman. I mean, maybe there was a queen here and there that probably did something really shitty, but most of the times we know who's causing the problems.
That's true. I think there was like one. I think it may have been a queen who started the Inquisition. I don't want to spout false facts, but you are
false
right.
history.
Me making history up on the spot, but yes. Unfortunately, I had looked this up. There's also another very embarrassing. I looked it up because I was looking at like famous Tauruses who did bad things, and as we know, Hitler was a Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Got to put in some horoscope astrology in this. There's really everything's in this interview.
Well, we could like have a separate podcast where it's about fake history and horoscopes.
Yeah.
Like when. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I could probably talk for 45 minutes about how Abe Lincoln was a secret Nazi before Nazis existed. That's fake history. Somebody needs to make that comic, The Secret History of Abe Lincoln. I mean, we all know that he was gay and John Wilkes Booth was his lover and that's why he killed him. But,
I did not know that. That's
something that I've heard for 20 years. I don't know where it started. I don't know, but it'd be really amazing if it was true.
That would be quite that would be a game changer.
Yeah. He killed him in a theater. They were watching a musical. He was a jealous lover. It wasn't a political thing. Anyway, before we get too out there. Yeah. June 25th, Tramps of the Apocalypse #1 comes out. First issue of a 3-issue mini from Dark Horse, Alice Darrow. Last thing I'll ask you, as a first, well, this is your first comic book. Any advice to anybody looking to go as a writer artist, a cartoonist, in anything you'd like to kind of put out there to a young creator?
One thing I'd like to say is that, and it took me a while to understand this, criticism that is not constructive is not criticism. People being mean or cruel about your work, don't listen to that. Criticism should always be constructive, so don't let people get you down. That would be my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice is do your best. Try not to be so perfectionist, because sometimes the most important thing is to finish what you're doing, and it will never live up to the expectation that you've created in your head, but to start something and be able to finish it is a huge achievement and super important. And the first step to making it, I think, as a writer, creator. I don't know if that's, yeah. And young ladies, don't let anyone tell you can't do this job. So
That's great.
work your hardest, do your best, and again, it's only real criticism when it's constructive. I say that because I went to a very complicated college where they were super mean, and it takes a while to learn, like, hey, these people are just being gratuitously mean, and it can really get you down. So stay hopeful and hang on.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And a lot of creators listen to this, a lot of people that are working on indie comics and stuff. So I like to get that perspective. I mean, I think it's just great to hear. And thank you for that. Anything else before we get going?
I guess you can follow me on Instagram at Dallas_Arrow. And that's also my username on Blue Sky, which I always forget about, but I check it. So
all right.
Reach out to me, follow me on there, and go buy my comic book, please.
Yes. And go see Alice at Golden Apple on June 28th.
Yes.
All right. Well, Alice, thank you so much. I'm glad, we made this happen. This is like, almost talking about it for a year, but wanted to wait till the book was coming out. And I can say from experience of reading this that everybody should go out and buy it. And if they don't, I'm going to come to your house. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to go to the comic store and I'm going to come back with the comic. That's a threat and a promise. Thanks for watching and listening to that. I hope you do go to the comic book store this Wednesday, June 25th, and pick up Tramps of the Apocalypse issue #1 from Dark Horse, and it's a 3-issue miniseries. And if you're in the LA area on June 28th, please go to Golden Apple Comics on Melrose and say hello to Alice for me and get your book signed and have it signed by Hugo as well. As we get into this 4th season, I'm ramping it up. I really want to just pump out the interviews and talk to more people and have great conversation to share with you. And it really does help if you can subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you desire and whatever platform you're currently listening to this on. And it would also help if you can like it on YouTube, drop a comment, or leave a review on Apple with words, like Dave's awesome. I love listening to his nasally New York Jewish voice. I guess it's not that nasally. Or on Spotify, you scroll up to the top and you just hit the 5 stars. I won't accept anything else. Come on. Eh? You wouldn't give a guy with glasses 4 stars, right? Especially clear frames like this. Anywho, thank you so much to Alice for doing this. Thank you for listening and coming back for the 4th season of Direct Edition. My name is Dave, and I'll see you next week. Peace. I don't